I learned the most important lesson of my life at 68 years old. The people who smile the brightest are often the ones sharpening the knife behind their backs. And sometimes, the thief who robs you blind is the same person you taught to pray. That Tuesday morning started like any other October day in Chicago, with the wind rattling the old windows of the brownstone on South Harper Avenue that my late husband Jerome and I bought back in 1982. I was standing in the kitchen, watching steam rise from my coffee cup, when I felt it, that strange prickling at the back of my neck, the kind that makes you turn around expecting to find someone watching you. But the kitchen was empty, just me, the hum of the refrigerator, and that nagging whisper in my gut telling me something was terribly, terribly wrong. My name is Loretta Mae Gibson, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered that the granddaughter I raised like my own daughter, the girl I took in when her mother abandoned her at 3 years old, the child I fed and clothed and loved with every fiber of my being, had been systematically stealing my identity, draining my accounts, and planning to have me declared incompetent so she could take everything Jerome and I spent 43 years building. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it really began, because betrayal never announces itself with trumpets and fanfare. It creeps in wearing the face you trust most, speaking in the voice that once called you grandmother, mama, or friend. 3 months earlier, my granddaughter Keisha moved back into my house. She was 32 then, with those same warm brown eyes her daddy had before he passed, and a smile that could light up the darkest room. She'd been living in Atlanta, working in something she called digital marketing, though I never fully understood what that meant. When she called me that July evening, her voice was thick with tears. "Grandma Loretta," she said, and I could hear her trying not to sob. "I lost my job. My landlord's evicting me. I don't have anywhere else to go." My heart broke right there. I remembered holding her as a baby, her tiny fist wrapped around my finger, remembered teaching her to read on this very couch, remembered her graduation when she threw her arms around my neck and whispered, "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Grandma." "Baby girl," I told her, "you always have a home here. You come on back to Chicago. We'll figure this out together." She arrived 2 weeks later with 3 suitcases and a smile that seemed just a little too bright, a little too practiced. But I pushed that thought away. Shame on me for doubting my own grandbaby when she was clearly going through a hard time. At first, everything seemed normal. Better than normal, actually. Keisha cooked dinner most nights. She'd gotten good at it, making these fancy dishes with herbs I'd never heard of. She helped me sort through Jerome's old papers in the attic, laughing at his terrible handwriting, crying with me when we found love letters he'd written me during his deployment in Vietnam. She drove me to my doctor's appointments, sat with me during my book club meetings with the ladies from church, even helped me set up one of those smartphone things so I could video chat with my cousin in Memphis. "Grandma," she'd say, squeezing my hand, "I'm so grateful you took me in. I'm going to take care of you now, the way you took care of me." I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. The first real sign came in late August. I'd gone to use my debit card at the Jewel Osco on 53rd Street, buying groceries for a dinner I was planning for the church auxiliary. When I swiped the card, the machine beeped red. Declined. I tried again. Declined. The cashier, a young man with kind eyes and too many piercings, looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, do you have another form of payment?" My face burned with embarrassment as the line behind me grew longer. I fumbled for my checkbook, hands shaking, aware of every impatient sigh and shuffled foot. When I finally made it to my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. That evening, I asked Keisha about it. She was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, her face illuminated by that blue glow that seems to follow young people everywhere these days. "Baby, something strange happened at the grocery store. My card was declined. I know I had money in that account." She looked up, concern flooding her features so quickly, so perfectly, that I almost didn't notice how her fingers tightened around her phone. "Oh, Grandma, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I saw some suspicious activity on your account last week. I called the bank, and they temporarily froze it for your protection. It's this whole identity theft thing. It's everywhere now." "Identity theft?" The words felt foreign in my mouth. "Yes, ma'am. Don't worry, I'm handling it. I've got you on fraud alert, and I'm working with the bank to get everything sorted out. You should have access again by tomorrow." She stood up and hugged me, and I smelled the coconut oil she used in her hair, the same kind I used to put in her braids when she was little. I'm taking care of you, remember? That's what family does. I nodded against her shoulder, feeling silly for worrying. My granddaughter was protecting me. I was lucky to have her. The card started working again the next day, just like she said it would. But something had shifted, something I couldn't name. It was like when you're reading a book and realize you've missed a crucial sentence somewhere, and now nothing makes complete sense, but you can't figure out where to go back to. September brought more little incidents. Mail that used to arrive for me stopped coming. Keisha said she'd set up paperless billing for everything. It's better for the environment, Grandma, and plus, you won't have all that clutter. My longtime bank sent me a letter saying my mailing address had been updated. When I asked Keisha about it, she said she'd added a P.O. box because porch pirates were stealing packages in the neighborhood. I'm just trying to keep your information safe, she explained, kissing my forehead. You're too trusting, Grandma. The world isn't like it was when you were young. Then there were the pills. I take medication for my blood pressure. Have been for 15 years. The same prescription, filled at the same Walgreens on every third Thursday of the month, like clockwork. But in mid-September, when I went to pick up my refill, the pharmacist, Linda, who I'd known for a decade, looked confused. Mrs. Gibson, according to our records, your prescription was transferred to a pharmacy in Naperville 2 weeks ago. Naperville? I've never even been to Naperville. Linda frowned, typing something into her computer. It says here the request came from... She squinted at the screen. Keisha Gibson. Is that your daughter? My granddaughter, I said slowly, feeling that prickling sensation again, stronger this time. But I didn't ask her to transfer anything. Well, I can certainly call them and have it transferred back, but you'll need to wait a few days for the authorization to process. I left without my medication, my mind spinning. When I got home, Keisha was making dinner, humming along to music playing from her phone. The kitchen smelled like garlic and thyme, warm and inviting. Baby, did you transfer my prescription to Naperville? She turned from the stove, wooden spoon in hand, looking puzzled. Naperville? No, Grandma. Why would I do that? The pharmacist said, Oh, wait, she snapped her fingers. I bet I know what happened. Remember last month when you were having those dizzy spells? I called around to a few pharmacies trying to find a compounding pharmacy that could adjust your dosage. I must have accidentally triggered a transfer request. I'm so sorry, I'll fix it right now. She was already pulling out her phone, dialing, talking to someone in that confident, professional voice she used for business calls. Within 10 minutes, she had it sorted out. Or so she said. She handed me her own blood pressure medication. It's the same exact thing, Grandma. Same dosage and everything. Just use mine until yours comes in. And went back to cooking dinner. I took the pill she gave me and tried to shake off the unease creeping up my spine like cold fingers. If you're watching this and thinking I should have seen the signs sooner, trust me, I've asked myself that same question 1,000 times. But when someone you love, someone you raised, someone who owes their entire existence to your sacrifice and care, when that person looks you in the eye and explains away every concern with such perfect logic, such apparent devotion, you want to believe them. You need to believe them. Because the alternative, that they're setting up an elaborate trap and you're walking into it with your eyes wide shut, that alternative is too horrifying to accept. October arrived with that particular Chicago chill that seeps into your bones and makes you remember every winter you've ever survived. The trees on my block turned brilliant shades of orange and gold, and Keisha started talking about selling the house. We were sitting at the kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon, and she'd made tea, the kind with honey and lemon that Jerome used to drink when he had a cold. She stirred her cup slowly, not meeting my eyes. Grandma, I've been thinking, this house is getting to be too much for you. All these stairs, the maintenance, the property taxes. Have you ever considered downsizing? Maybe moving into one of those nice senior communities? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This is my home, Keisha. Your grandfather and I bought this house with money we saved from his job at the post office and my work at the hospital. He died in the bedroom upstairs. I'm not leaving. I know. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her palm was warm, her grip firm. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just worried about you. What if you fall down these stairs? What if something happens and you're all alone? I won't always be here to take care of you. Are you planning on leaving? My voice came out sharper than I intended. No, of course not. But Grandma, You have to think practically. This house is worth a lot of money. You could sell it, move somewhere more manageable, and have all that equity to live on, to travel, to enjoy your life. I am enjoying my life, right here. She smiled, but something flickered behind her eyes, something that vanished so quickly, I almost thought I'd imagined it. Okay, Grandma, just think about it. That's all I'm asking. But she didn't drop it. Over the next 2 weeks, she brought it up constantly. Articles left on the kitchen counter about the benefits of senior living. Brochures for retirement communities spread out on the coffee table. Comments dropped casually into conversation. I heard Mrs. Patterson down the street fell and broke her hip. She was alone for 6 hours before anyone found her. Can you imagine? Or, the Johnsons sold their house for $400,000. Think what you could do with that kind of money. I started feeling dizzy more often, forgetting where I'd put my keys, my glasses, my purse. Small things that everyone my age experiences, but Keisha would make such a production out of it. Grandma, this is the 3rd time this week you've forgotten where you put your phone. Maybe we should make an appointment with your doctor. I'm fine. I'm just tired. Are you sure? Because these memory issues... I said I'm fine, Keisha. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. I woke up that morning with that strange feeling again, stronger than ever. Something pulling at me, telling me to pay attention, to look closer, to stop being so willfully blind. I made my coffee and stood at the kitchen window, watching a squirrel bury nuts in the small patch of yard behind the house, and I made a decision. I was going to the bank, not my usual branch on 53rd Street, where the tellers knew me and would probably mention to Keisha if I came in asking questions. No, I was going to the main branch downtown, where I could get copies of my statements without anyone reporting back to my granddaughter about what her paranoid grandmother was up to. I didn't tell Keisha where I was going. She was still asleep when I left at 8:30, driving my old Honda Accord through morning traffic, my hands tight on the steering wheel, my heart beating hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. The bank was one of those modern buildings, all glass and steel, making me feel small and old and out of place. I waited in line behind a young white man in an expensive suit who spent the entire time yelling into his phone about stock options. When I finally reached the window, a young woman with bright lipstick and a practiced smile asked how she could help me. I need copies of my bank statements, all of them, going back 6 months. Certainly, ma'am. I'll just need to see your ID and verify some information. I handed over my driver's license, and she typed information into her computer. Her smile faded slightly. Mrs. Gibson, I'm showing that you have a co-signer on this account, a Ms. Keisha Gibson. Did you know about that? The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. A co-signer? Since when? According to our records, more typing. Since August 15th, 2 days after Keisha moved in. I never authorized that. The teller's professional mask slipped, revealing genuine concern. Ma'am, I think you should speak with one of our managers. Would you mind waiting just a moment? She disappeared into a back office, and I stood there in the middle of the bank lobby, feeling like I was underwater, like sounds were reaching me from far away. Other customers flowed around me, living their normal lives, while my world cracked and split beneath my feet. The manager who emerged was a middle-aged black woman named Patricia Crawford, according to her name tag. She had kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of my late sister. Mrs. Gibson, why don't you come back to my office where we can talk privately? I followed her into a small room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a window overlooking the Chicago River. She closed the door and gestured for me to sit. Now, I want you to tell me everything you're concerned about, and don't worry about sounding foolish or paranoid. I've been doing this job for 23 years, and I've seen things that would make your hair stand on end. So I told her about Keisha moving in, about the declined card, about the prescription transfer, about the pressure to sell my house, about the feeling in my gut that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression growing grimmer with each detail I shared. When I finished, she turned to her computer and began pulling up my accounts. Mrs. Gibson, I'm going to be very direct with you. The signature on the co-signer authorization form doesn't match your signature in our system. See here? She turned the screen so I could see 2 signatures side by side. One was mine, steady, clear, the distinctive way I've signed my name for 50 years. The other was close, but the L was wrong, and the final flourish on the Gibson was too looped. That's not my signature. No, ma'am, it's not. And there's more. She pulled up my account activity. In the past 6 weeks, there have been numerous transfers from your checking and savings accounts to an account at a different bank. Small amounts at first, 500 here, 1,000 there, but they've been getting larger. 3 weeks ago, $15,000 was transferred out. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. How much is left? Patricia's face was filled with pity. In your checking account, $42. Your savings account was emptied completely yesterday. $73,000. Gone. Money that Jerome and I had saved for over 4 decades. Money from his pension and my nursing salary. Money we'd planned to leave to our children, our grandchildren. Money I was supposed to use to live on for the rest of my life. Stolen by the child I raised. Mrs. Gibson, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Patricia's voice cut through the roaring in my ears. What's happening to you is called financial elder abuse. It's more common than most people realize, and it's often perpetrated by family members. We need to act quickly. I'm going to freeze all your accounts immediately, and I'm going to give you the name of an attorney who specializes in these cases. But you need to understand. She paused, making sure I was really hearing her. You need to understand that when you leave here and go home, you cannot let Keisha know that you know. Not yet. We need to gather evidence, build a case, document everything. If you confront her now, she'll have time to cover her tracks, and it will be much harder to prove what she's done. Can you do that? Can you go home and pretend nothing has changed? Could I? Could I sit across the dinner table from my granddaughter, the girl I'd loved more than my own life, and pretend I didn't know she was robbing me blind? Could I smile and nod and make small talk while rage and heartbreak and sheer disbelief tore me apart from the inside? I thought about Jerome, about the promises I'd made him on his deathbed. Take care of Keisha, he'd whispered, his hand weak in mine. She needs you. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made, every extra shift I'd worked, every time I'd gone without so that child could have what she needed. And I thought about what my own mother used to tell me, back when I was young and stupid and thought the world was fair. Baby girl, the Lord doesn't give you more than you can handle, but he sure as hell tests exactly how much that is. I looked Patricia Crawford in the eye, and I nodded. Yes, I said, and my voice didn't shake, not even a little. I can do that. Tell me what I need to do. She handed me a folder full of printed statements, account records, and contact information for an attorney named Marcus Webb. Then she did something unexpected. She reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. You're stronger than you think, Mrs. Gibson, and you're not alone in this. We're going to help you get your money back and make sure she answers for what she's done. I drove home in a fog, my hands moving the steering wheel automatically while my mind tried and failed to process everything. The tree-lined streets of Hyde Park passed by my windows, like scenes from someone else's life. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for 10 minutes, staring at the front door of my house, trying to figure out how to walk through it and face my granddaughter without screaming or crying or falling apart completely. Finally, I gathered every ounce of strength I had, the same strength that got me through Jerome's death and my son's drug addiction, and every other hard thing life had thrown at me, and I walked inside. Keisha was in the kitchen, making lunch, singing along to music from her phone. She looked up when I came in, her face bright with that beautiful smile that used to make my heart sing. Hey, Grandma, perfect timing. I'm making turkey sandwiches. Want one? And I smiled back at her, channeling every acting skill I'd ever learned from watching soap operas with my mother. And I said, that sounds wonderful, baby girl. Thank you. If she noticed that my smile didn't reach my eyes, she didn't mention it. That night, after Keisha went to bed, I sat in the dark living room with the folder Patricia had given me spread out on my lap, and I started reading. Every transaction, every forged signature, every lie documented in black and white. And with each page I turned, something inside me crystallized, not hate exactly, but something colder and harder and infinitely more dangerous. Determination. My granddaughter thought I was a foolish old woman, too trusting and too senile to notice what was happening right under my nose. She thought she could smile and hug me and call me Grandma while systematically destroying everything I'd built. She was wrong. And by the time I was done, she was going to learn exactly how wrong she'd been to underestimate Loretta Mae Gibson. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, my body vibrating with a strange energy I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't anger exactly. Anger burns hot and fast, then fades to ash. This was something colder, more controlled. This was the feeling of a woman who'd finally stopped making excuses for someone else's cruelty and decided to do something about it. I made coffee in the dark kitchen, watching my reflection in the window as the sky slowly brightened from black to deep purple to pale gray. The woman looking back at me had silver hair and wrinkles around her eyes, but there was something in her gaze I recognized from long ago. From the night Jerome came home drunk when Keisha's father was born, and I had to decide whether to stay or leave, from the day I confronted the nursing supervisor who was stealing medication and everyone said to keep my mouth shut, the look of a woman who'd made up her mind and wouldn't be moved. I called the attorney, Marcus Webb, as soon as his office opened at 8. His receptionist told me he could see me that afternoon at 2. Perfect. Keisha had mentioned she was going to meet a friend for lunch and wouldn't be back until 3:30. "Grandma, you'll be okay here by yourself for a few hours?" she'd asked the night before, her voice dripping with that concerned sweetness that now made my skin crawl. "Of course, baby. I'll probably just take a nap. You go have fun with your friend." What friend? I wondered now. Or was she meeting with whoever was helping her move my money around? Because I'd learned something from those bank statements. The transfers weren't going to an account in Keisha's name. They were going to something called Gibson Family Trust, which sounded legitimate until you realized no such trust had ever been established by me or Jerome. My granddaughter wasn't just stealing from me. She was sophisticated about it. Marcus Webb's office was in the Loop, on the 14th floor of a building that had seen better days. The elevator groaned and shuddered, and the hallway smelled like old coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. But when I walked into his office, Marcus himself made me feel like I'd made the right choice. He was maybe 50, black, with gray threading through his close-cropped hair and glasses that made him look scholarly. More importantly, when I told him my story, he didn't look shocked or skeptical. He just nodded slowly, taking notes in neat handwriting on a yellow legal pad. "Mrs. Gibson, how much do you know about elder financial abuse?" "Just what Patricia at the bank told me. That it's common. It's an epidemic," he said quietly. "Every year, billions of dollars are stolen from older Americans, and in about 60% of cases, the perpetrator is a family member. Adult children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, people the victim trusts implicitly. People who have access to their homes, their mail, their personal information. Why would they do it?" The question burst out of me before I could stop it. I gave her everything. I raised her when her own mother couldn't be bothered. I loved her. Marcus set down his pen and looked at me with infinite patience. "In my experience, there are usually 3 factors. Opportunity. She had complete access to you and your life. Rationalization. She probably tells herself you don't really need the money, or that she deserves it for taking care of you, or that you're too old to enjoy it anyway. And the third factor is usually financial desperation, combined with a sense of entitlement. Financial desperation. I thought about Keisha's supposed job loss, her eviction, her tears on the phone. Had any of it been real? Or had she been planning this all along, setting up the perfect victim, her own grandmother? "What do we do now?" I asked. "First, we document everything. I need you to keep a detailed journal of every interaction with Keisha. Every conversation about money or the house, every time she does something that seems off. Dates, times, exactly what was said. Second, we're going to request all security camera footage from any business where fraudulent transactions might have occurred. Third, I'm going to hire a forensic accountant to trace exactly where your money went. And fourth," he paused, making sure I was listening, "you're going to install cameras in your house." I blinked. Cameras? Hidden cameras. In the kitchen? The living room, your bedroom if she has access to it. We need to catch her in the act, going through your mail, forging documents, making phone calls about your accounts. Video evidence is incredibly powerful in court. That feels wrong, spying on my own granddaughter in my own home. Marcus leaned forward, his expression gentle but firm. "Mrs. Gibson, she forged your signature. She stole $73,000 from you. She's probably planning to have you declared incompetent so she can take your house. She violated your trust in the most fundamental way possible. Installing cameras isn't wrong. It's self-defense." He was right. I knew he was right, but knowing it didn't make it hurt any less. That evening, Marcus's private investigator, a woman named Shanice with intelligent eyes and a warm smile, came to my house while Keisha was out and installed 4 tiny cameras. One in the bookshelf in the living room, hidden behind a photo of Jerome. One in the kitchen, tucked into the decorative molding above the cabinets. One in the hallway, disguised as a smoke detector. And one in my bedroom, because Shanice insisted. "If she's going through your things when you're asleep or out of the house, we need to see it," she said. The cameras fed to an app on a new phone Marcus had given me. Not my regular phone, which Keisha had set up and probably had access to, but a completely separate device that I kept hidden in my underwear drawer, wrapped in an old scarf. "Check the footage every day," Shanice instructed. "You'd be surprised what people do when they think no one's watching." For the next week, I lived a double life. During the day, I played the role of forgetful, trusting grandmother. I smiled at Keisha's suggestions that I take memory supplements she'd ordered online. I nodded along when she talked about touring senior living facilities just to get a sense of what's out there. I even let her take me to a doctor's appointment with a physician I'd never met before, in a practice 45 minutes from my regular doctor's office. The new doctor was young, maybe 30, with slicked back hair and an expensive watch. He asked me a series of questions. What year is it? Who's the president? Count backward from 100 by 7s, and I answered them all correctly. But I watched Keisha in my peripheral vision, saw how she leaned forward when he asked about memory problems, saw how she interjected with comments like, "She forgets things all the time, and last week she left the stove on." I hadn't left the stove on. That was a lie. But the doctor wrote something on his chart, and Keisha smiled. After we left in the car, she patted my hand. "That went well, Grandma. Dr. Okafor seems very thorough. Why did we go to him instead of Dr. Harrison? I've been seeing Dr. Harrison for 15 years. Oh, Dr. Okafor specializes in geriatric care. He's better equipped to handle issues related to aging and memory." Issues related to aging and memory. Building a paper trail, I realized. Creating documentation that could be used to prove I was incompetent. My hands tightened on my purse in my lap. That night, I checked the camera footage on my secret phone. Most of it was boring. Keisha cooking, watching TV, scrolling through her phone. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was from the kitchen camera, filmed that afternoon while I'd been napping. Keisha was on the phone, her voice low but clear. "Yeah, I took her to Dr. Okafor today. He's documenting everything. I told you, it's going to take a few more weeks to build the case, but once we have enough evidence of cognitive decline, we can file for guardianship. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She thinks I'm here to help her." "The house?" "I already have a buyer lined up. A developer who wants to tear it down and build condos. He's offering $500,000. Don't worry about her. Once I'm her legal guardian, she'll do whatever I tell her to. Or she can go into a state-run nursing home. I don't really care either way." I sat on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in my hand, and I want to tell you I cried, but I didn't. The tears had dried up somewhere between betrayal and evidence gathering. What I felt instead was a terrible clarity, like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air goes still and you can see everything with perfect, awful precision. My granddaughter didn't just want my money. She wanted to erase me entirely, to lock me away somewhere and take over my entire life like I'd never existed at all. The question was, what was I going to do about it? If you're watching this and you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, someone you loved with your whole heart, I want you to know something. You're not stupid for trusting them. You're not weak for believing their lies. You're human. And the moment you decide to stop being a victim and start being a survivor, that's the moment everything changes. So if my story is resonating with you, do me a favor. Leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because the only way we stop predators like my granddaughter is by speaking up and refusing to stay silent. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered evidence like a woman possessed. I photographed every document Keisha left lying around. I recorded every conversation where she pushed me to sign something or make a decision about my finances or my health. I met with Marcus twice more, bringing him memory cards full of camera footage and pages of notes documenting her behavior. "This is excellent work, Mrs. Gibson," he told me, spreading the evidence across his desk. "Between this and the forensic accounting results, we have more than enough to pursue both criminal charges and a civil lawsuit." "How much did the accountant find?" Marcus's expression darkened. "The Gibson Family Trust account received $87,000 from your accounts over the past 8 weeks. About 14,000 more than you'd realized was missing. She'd been making small withdrawals from your retirement account as well. The money was then transferred to several different accounts, making it harder to trace, but we found it. Most of it's still accessible. We can get it back. $87,000. The number was so large it didn't feel real. Where is it now? About 60,000 is in a brokerage account in Keisha's name. She's been investing it. 20,000 was spent. Rent for a luxury apartment she's been keeping in the West Loop, a car payment for a BMW, designer clothes, expensive dinners. The rest is in cash, withdrawn from various ATMs. So while she was living in my house, eating my food, crying about being broke and homeless, she'd been maintaining a secret life, a luxury apartment, a BMW, a life funded entirely by my stolen money. When do we move? I asked. Soon. But Mrs. Gibson, I need to prepare you for what's coming. When we file charges and petition for restitution, this is going to become public. Your neighbors will know. Your church will know. Everyone will know that your granddaughter stole from you. Are you ready for that? Was I? Was I ready for the shame, the pity, the whispers behind my back? Was I ready to destroy what was left of my family? Because Keisha's father, my son Jerome Jr., would undoubtedly take his daughter's side, would blame me for pressing charges, would say I was being vindictive or senile or cruel. I thought about my husband Jerome, about the values he'd tried to instill in our children and grandchildren. Honesty, integrity, accountability. He would have been devastated by what Keisha had done, but he also would have insisted that actions have consequences. I'm ready, I said, but I wasn't ready for what happened next. The following Tuesday, exactly 4 weeks after I'd first gone to the bank, I came home from the grocery store to find Keisha sitting at the kitchen table with two strangers. One was a woman in her 40s wearing a blazer and carrying a leather briefcase. The other was a uniformed police officer. My heart stopped. Had she found out? Had she somehow discovered what I was doing? Keisha stood up when I walked in, and her face was a mask of concern so perfect it could have won an Oscar. Grandma, thank God you're home. I was so worried. You've been gone for 3 hours. I looked at the clock. I'd left at 2:30. It was now 3:45. I was gone for an hour and 15 minutes, Keisha. She exchanged a glance with the woman in the blazer, a look that said, "See what I'm dealing with? Grandma, it's almost 6 o'clock. I looked at the clock again. It still said 3:45, but then I realized she'd changed it. She'd deliberately set the clock back so she could claim I was losing track of time. The woman in the blazer stepped forward, extending her hand. Mrs. Gibson, my name is Catherine Walsh. I'm a social worker with the Department of Aging and Disability Services. Your granddaughter called me because she's concerned about your welfare. Ice flooded my veins. This was it. This was Keisha's move, and she'd made it before I was ready. I don't need a social worker. I'm perfectly fine. I'm sure you are, Catherine said in that particular tone. That means I don't believe you at all. But your granddaughter has raised some concerns about your memory, your ability to manage your medications, your safety living alone. I'm not living alone. She lives here. For now, Keisha interjected, her voice breaking beautifully on cue. But Grandma, I can't stay forever. I need to get back to my life, and I'm terrified of what will happen to you when I'm gone. Yesterday you left the stove on. Last week you forgot to take your blood pressure medication for 3 days. You're getting confused about what day it is, what time it is. Every word was a lie. Every single word. But she delivered them with such conviction, such apparent anguish, that even I almost believed her. The police officer, his name tag said Ramirez, spoke up. Ma'am, no one's trying to upset you. We just want to make sure you're safe and getting the care you need. Catherine Walsh opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. I'd like to ask you some questions, if that's all right. Just a standard assessment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pull out my phone and show them the footage of Keisha planning to steal my house. I wanted to tell them about the $87,000 and the secret apartment and all of it. But Marcus's voice echoed in my head. When we move hard and fast. But if you tip your hand too early, she'll have time to prepare a defense. So I sat down at my own kitchen table, in my own house, and I answered Catherine Walsh's questions. What day is it? Who's the president? Can you remember these 3 words? Can you repeat them back to me in 5 minutes? I answered every question correctly, but I watched Keisha's face, and I saw her disappointment each time I got something right. When Catherine was finished, she made notes in a tablet. Mrs. Gibson, your cognitive function appears normal for your age. However, given your granddaughter's concerns and the behavior she's documented, she pulled out a folder, and my stomach dropped. I think it would be prudent to schedule a comprehensive evaluation with a geriatric psychiatrist. The folder was full of papers. I caught glimpses of typed notes, dates, times. October 12th, forgot where she left her car keys. October 18th, couldn't remember whether she'd eaten lunch. All lies, all fabricated, but typed up neatly, officially, looking for all the world like legitimate documentation. I don't need a psychiatrist. I need my granddaughter to stop lying about me. Keisha's eyes filled with tears, real tears somehow, or maybe she'd put drops in them when I wasn't looking. Grandma, I'm not lying. I love you. I'm just trying to help. Catherine Walsh stood, tucking the folder back into her briefcase. Mrs. Gibson, I'm going to recommend a full evaluation. In the meantime, I'll be checking in regularly to assess your living situation. And I want you to know that if you're ever feeling unsafe or confused, you can call me. She handed me a business card. After they left, Keisha made a show of hugging me, of apologizing for upsetting me, of explaining that she was only doing this because she cared. And I let her. I played my role. I nodded and patted her hand and said I understood. But that night, after she went to bed, I called Marcus Webb. She made her move, I told him. We need to make ours, now. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, all right, I'll file the paperwork tomorrow. But Mrs. Gibson, once we do this, there's no going back. Are you absolutely certain? I thought about Jerome, about 43 years of marriage and hard work and saving every penny. I thought about the promises I'd made to myself in Patricia Crawford's office. I thought about Catherine Walsh's folder full of lies and Keisha's crocodile tears. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Then let's end this. The next morning dawned cold and bright. The kind of November day when the sky is so blue it hurts to look at. I got dressed carefully. My best church dress, the navy one with the pearl buttons, and the gold cross necklace Jerome gave me on our 25th anniversary. If I was going to war, I was going to look like someone who deserved to win. Keisha was still asleep when Marcus called at 8:30. It's done, he said. The petition has been filed with the court. The police have been notified. They'll be there within the hour to arrest her. My hand tightened on the phone. Arrest? Elder abuse is a felony in Illinois, Mrs. Gibson. She forged your signature, stole over $80,000, and attempted to defraud you of your home. Yes, she's being arrested. After I hung up, I sat in the living room and waited. I'd imagined this moment for weeks now, what I would feel when justice finally came. I'd expected satisfaction, maybe even joy, but what I felt instead was a deep, aching sadness. Because no matter what Keisha had done to me, she was still the little girl I'd taught to read, still the teenager who'd cried in my arms when her first boyfriend broke her heart, still the young woman who'd called me from college just to hear my voice. The person being arrested today wasn't that girl, or maybe she was, and I just never wanted to see the darkness that lived alongside the light. At 9:15, a police car pulled up outside my house, then another, then Marcus's sedan. I heard Keisha's bedroom door open upstairs, heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard her voice, sleepy and confused. Grandma? What's going on? Why are there police cars? She stopped in the doorway to the living room, seeing me sitting there in my church dress, seeing Marcus standing beside me, seeing the uniformed officers coming up the walkway, and I watched understanding bloom across her face like poison flowers. Grandma, she whispered, what did you do? I stood up, and when I spoke, my voice was steady and cold and absolutely clear. I did what you should have known I would do, Keisha. I stopped you. The officers read Keisha her rights in my living room, their voices flat and professional, and I watched my granddaughter's face cycle through emotions like a storm passing across water. Shock, then denial, then panic, and finally, rage. You can't do this, she said, her voice rising. She's confused. She doesn't understand what's happening. She has dementia. Ma'am, you need to come with us. The officer, a tall black woman with steel in her eyes, took Keisha's arm firmly. No, Grandma, tell them you didn't mean this. I stood there in my navy dress with the pearl buttons, my hands clasped in front of me, and I said nothing. Because what was there to say? That I was sorry for trusting her? Sorry for loving her? Sorry for catching her? Marcus stepped forward. his voice calm and authoritative. "Officers, I have documentation of multiple felony counts: forgery, identity theft, financial exploitation of an elderly person, and attempted fraud. It's all been submitted to the DA's office." Keisha's eyes found mine, and in them I saw something I'd never seen before: hatred, pure and undiluted. "I took care of you," she hissed as the officers guided her toward the door. "I gave up my life to take care of you, and this is how you repay me? You ungrateful, selfish old woman." The door closed behind her, cutting off her voice mid-curse, and suddenly my house was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock that Keisha had manipulated just yesterday to make me look confused. Marcus touched my shoulder gently. "Are you all right?" Was I all right? I'd just had my granddaughter arrested. I'd just watched the child I raised call me names that would have gotten her mouth washed out with soap when she was little. I'd just torn apart what was left of my family. "I will be," I said, and I meant it. Over the next several days, I learned things about Keisha that shattered what remained of my illusions. The forensic accountant Marcus hired traced the money through a maze of accounts and discovered that the apartment in the West Loop, the BMW, the designer clothes, those weren't recent purchases. Keisha had been living that lifestyle for over 2 years, long before she called me crying about losing her job and being evicted. There had been no job in Atlanta, no eviction, no desperate circumstances forcing her to come to me for help. She'd come to Chicago with a plan. She'd researched elder fraud. She'd set up dummy accounts. She'd probably even cultivated a relationship with Dr. Okafor months in advance, preparing him to document my supposed cognitive decline. I'd been her mark from the beginning. Marcus showed me printouts of text messages his investigator had recovered from Keisha's phone. Messages between her and a man named Travis, who I later learned was her boyfriend, a small-time con artist with a record of insurance fraud. "The old lady is easy," one message read. "She's so desperate for family, she'll believe anything." Another, "Give it 3 months max. Then we file for guardianship, sell the house, and disappear." And the one that hurt most, "She's not even really my grandmother. My dad's her son from her husband's first marriage. I don't owe her anything." I sat in Marcus's office reading those messages, and something inside me that had been holding on by a thread finally snapped. Not broke, snapped, like a bone setting itself after being fractured, painful but necessary. "She's lying," I said quietly. "Jerome Jr. is my biological son. I was there when he was born. There was no first marriage." Marcus looked at the message again, then at me. "She's rewriting history to justify what she's doing. It's common in these cases. The perpetrator convinces themselves the victim isn't really family, or doesn't deserve the money, or whatever narrative they need to silence their conscience. If she even had a conscience left to silence. The preliminary hearing was set for December 15th. In the meantime, Keisha made bail, $25,000, paid for by my son Jerome Jr., who showed up at my house 3 days after his daughter's arrest. I hadn't seen my son in almost 8 months, not since Easter dinner, when he'd been too busy on his phone to talk to me. He stood on my porch looking older than his 47 years, his face drawn and gray. "Mama, we need to talk." I let him in because he was still my son, no matter what. But I didn't offer him coffee or ask him to sit down. I just stood in the hallway and waited. Keisha told me what happened, her side of it. I'm sure she did. She said you're sick, that you're having memory problems and you got confused, thought she was stealing from you when she was actually trying to help. Stop. My voice cut through his words like scissors through paper. Junior, I'm going to tell you this once, and you need to hear me. Your daughter stole $87,000 from me. She forged my signature on legal documents. She tried to have me declared incompetent so she could take my house. I have video evidence, bank records, and text messages proving every word of this. Now, you can choose to believe her lies, or you can face the truth. But don't stand in my house and insult my intelligence by suggesting I'm the one who's confused. He flinched like I'd slapped him. She's my daughter, Mama. And I'm your mother, the woman who raised you when your father was deployed, the woman who worked double shifts to pay for your school clothes and Christmas presents, the woman who bailed you out when you got arrested for possession when you were 19, who paid for your rehab when you couldn't stop using, who never gave up on you even when you gave me every reason to. His eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair, Junior? When your daughter was 3 years old and her mama left her at a gas station because she was too high to remember she had a child, who took that baby in? When Keisha needed braces and new shoes and help with her homework, who was there? You were working on your second marriage, barely remembered you had a daughter. I raised her, and she repaid me by plotting to steal everything I have. She said she was trying to protect you. With a fake medical diagnosis and a boyfriend who has a criminal record? That's protection? He hadn't known about Travis. I could see it in his face, the way the color drained from his cheeks. What boyfriend? So I told him. Everything. And I watched my son crumble under the weight of the truth about his daughter. When I finished, he sat down heavily on my couch, his head in his hands. God, Mama, I'm so sorry. I should have known something was wrong. Yes, you should have. He looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the little boy he used to be, the one who would crawl into my lap when he had a nightmare. What happens now? Now she faces consequences. The DA is charging her with multiple felonies. If she's convicted, she could get 10 years. 10 years. He said it like he couldn't comprehend the number. Mama, please. She made a mistake. A terrible mistake, but she's still young. She can change. She's 32 years old, Junior. She's not a child. And this wasn't a mistake. A mistake is when you forget to pay a bill or say something hurtful in anger. This was calculated, planned, and executed over months. She looked me in the eye every single day and lied to me while she robbed me blind. She's your granddaughter. She stopped being my granddaughter the moment she decided I was worth more to her dead or institutionalized than alive and free. The words hung in the air between us, harsh and final. Junior stood up slowly, like an old man, and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back. I paid her bail. I know you probably think that's wrong, but she's my daughter, and I can't just abandon her. I nodded. I understand. But you need to understand something too. When you chose to stand by her, you chose not to stand by me. That's your right. But don't expect me to forgive it. He left, and I haven't spoken to him since. The hardest part of the weeks that followed wasn't the legal proceedings or the media attention. Yes, the local news picked up the story. Grandmother presses charges against granddaughter in elder abuse case. It was the loneliness. My church, Bethel AME, where I'd been a member for 38 years, split down the middle. Half the congregation supported me, brought me casseroles, and called to check on me. The other half whispered that I was being cruel, that family should forgive family, that pressing charges was taking things too far. Sister Mabel, who I'd been friends with for 25 years, actually said to my face, "Loretta, that girl made a mistake. You're going to ruin her whole life over money." She tried to ruin mine, Mabel. Where's your outrage about that? But Mabel just shook her head and walked away, and I realized that some people will always value the appearance of family unity over actual justice. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was kinder. She was 74 from Taiwan and had lived next door to me for 15 years. One evening she knocked on my door with a pot of soup and sat with me at my kitchen table while I cried for the first time since Keisha's arrest. "My nephew did similar thing," she said in her accented English. "Not steal money. Steal business. My husband's restaurant. Say he run it for us when we get old, then change ownership papers. By time we find out, too late. Restaurant gone. What did you do? Nothing. In my culture, you don't fight family in court. You suffer in silence. But I regret every day. I regret not fighting. You are brave, Loretta. Don't let anyone tell you different." I squeezed her hand, and we sat together in comfortable silence. Two old women who understood what it meant to be betrayed by people who should have protected you. The trial was set for February. In January, the DA's office called me in to prep for my testimony. The prosecutor was a sharp young woman named Alicia Reeves, who wore power suits and spoke with the kind of confidence I wished I'd had at her age. "Mrs. Gibson, I want you to understand what's going to happen in that courtroom. Keisha's defense attorney is going to try to paint you as confused, vindictive, or both. He's going to suggest you're misremembering events, that you gave Keisha permission to access your accounts and then forgot about it, that you're pressing charges because you're angry she wanted to move out. Let him try. I have evidence. We have evidence. But juries are unpredictable, especially in family cases. They want to believe that grandmothers and granddaughters love each other, that this is all just a big misunderstanding. You need to be prepared for the possibility that she walks. And if she does?" Alicia's expression hardened. "Then at least we've put her behavior on record. At least the next person she tries this with can point to this case and say, she has a history. Sometimes that's all we can do. But I didn't want to think about a next victim. I wanted justice for this one. Me. Before you think I'm just a bitter old woman out for revenge, let me tell you something. There were nights I lay awake questioning myself, wondering if I was being too harsh, wondering if I should have just let it go, taken what money I could recover and moved on, wondering if destroying Keisha's life was worth the satisfaction of being right. And every time I started down that path, I thought about the other elderly people out there, the ones who don't discover the theft in time, the ones who do discover it but are too afraid or ashamed to report it, the ones who end up losing everything because people like Keisha face no consequences. So if you're watching this and you've been a victim of something similar, I want you to know, reporting it doesn't make you vindictive. Pressing charges doesn't make you cruel. Refusing to be silent doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you brave. And I hope you'll take a moment to share this video with someone who needs to hear that message, because silence only protects the guilty. The trial began on February 9th, one of those bitter Chicago winter days when the wind off the lake cuts right through your coat. I wore the same navy dress with pearl buttons that I'd worn the day Keisha was arrested. My armor. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected from watching TV legal dramas. Fluorescent lights, uncomfortable wooden benches, the smell of old books and floor wax. Keisha sat at the defense table in a conservative gray suit, her hair pulled back, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked young and vulnerable, exactly what her attorney wanted the jury to see. She didn't look at me. Not once during the entire trial. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Marcus testified about the forged signatures. The forensic accountant explained the money trail in language simple enough for everyone to understand. Patricia Crawford from the bank testified about the fraudulent account changes. Shanice, the private investigator, presented the video evidence. Hours of footage reduced to the most damning clips. The jury watched Keisha on camera, talking on the phone. Once I'm her legal guardian, she'll do whatever I tell her. They watched her go through my mail when I was asleep, photographing bank statements and tax documents. They watched her put drops in her own eyes before coming downstairs to cry to me about being worried about my health. And I watched them watching her, saw their expressions shift from neutral to disturbed to disgusted. Then came my testimony. I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt like water, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Alicia Reeves took me through my story step by step, meeting Keisha at the bank, the forged signatures, the stolen money, the plan to have me declared incompetent. Mrs. Gibson, Alicia asked gently, can you tell the jury how it felt to discover that your granddaughter was betraying you? I looked out at those 12 faces in the jury box, men and women of different ages and races, all of them strangers, all of them now holding my pain in their hands. It felt like dying, I said quietly, like someone had reached into my chest and pulled out everything I believed about family and love and trust and shown me it was all just a lie. I raised that girl from the time she was 3 years old. I loved her more than I loved myself, and she looked me in the eye every single day while she plotted to steal everything from me and lock me away somewhere, to die alone. That's not just theft, that's murder of the spirit. Someone in the gallery was crying. I didn't look to see who. Then came the cross-examination. Keisha's attorney was a smooth-talking man named Richard Kowalski, who probably cost more per hour than I used to make in a week. Mrs. Gibson, you're 68 years old, is that correct? Yes. And you live alone? Now I do. I didn't when all this was happening. Right, because Keisha was living with you, taking care of you. Isn't that right? She was living in my house. I wouldn't say she was taking care of me. But she cooked for you, drove you to appointments, helped manage your bills? She did those things, yes. And you're a widow. Your husband passed away 7 years ago? Yes, that must have been very difficult. Lonely. I saw where he was going. Losing Jerome was hard, but I wasn't so lonely that I needed someone to steal from me. A few people in the gallery laughed. The judge gavelled for silence. Kowalski pressed on. Mrs. Gibson, have you ever forgotten where you put your keys? Of course, everyone has. Have you ever forgotten an appointment? Once or twice over the years. Have you ever had trouble understanding new technology? I'm 68, not stupid. I can learn. But you did need Keisha's help setting up your smartphone, didn't you? Your email account? Your online banking? She offered to help. That doesn't mean I needed it. But you let her help. You trusted her with your passwords, your account numbers, your personal information. Yes, I trusted her. She was my granddaughter. Exactly. You trusted her. And when she tried to protect you, to help you manage your affairs as you got older, you interpreted that as theft. She didn't interpret anything. Alicia started to object, but I cut her off. Mr. Kowalski, she forged my signature. She stole $87,000. She set up fake accounts and lied to doctors and social workers to make me look incompetent. That's not interpretation. That's fact. The judge sustained Alicia's objection, but it didn't matter. I'd said what I needed to say. Keisha testified in her own defense, and I'll give her this. She was good. She cried at all the right moments. She talked about how worried she'd been about me, how she'd only accessed my accounts to pay my bills and keep me safe, how she'd called social services out of genuine concern. I love my grandmother, she said, tears streaming down her face. I would never hurt her. Never. This is all just a terrible misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But then Alicia got her turn at cross-examination. Miss Gibson, you testified that you were unemployed and homeless when you moved in with your grandmother. Is that correct? Yes. But you were actually paying rent on an apartment in the West Loop at that time, weren't you? A pause. I sublet that apartment. For $1,800 a month? Yes. And you own a BMW? It's leased. At $600 a month. Quite expensive for someone who's unemployed. I had savings. Did those savings come from the $87,000 you transferred out of your grandmother's accounts? I didn't transfer. I was managing her money for her. Managing it into your own account? The cracks in Keisha's composure began to show. By the time Alicia was finished with her, the jury looked at my granddaughter with something approaching contempt. Closing arguments were powerful. Alicia painted a picture of calculated elder abuse, of a predator who targeted the most vulnerable person in her life. Kowalski argued reasonable doubt, family misunderstanding, an old woman's confusion. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman, a middle-aged Latina woman with gray threading through her dark hair, stood and read the verdict. On the count of financial exploitation of an elderly person, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of identity theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of forgery, we find the defendant guilty. 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 Keisha collapsed in her chair. Kowalski put a hand on her shoulder, and I sat in the gallery, hands folded in my lap, feeling nothing but tired. The sentencing hearing was 3 weeks later. The judge, an older white man named Mitchell Hartman, who'd seen everything in his 30 years on the bench, listened to both sides present their arguments. Kowalski begged for leniency. First offense. Young woman with her whole life ahead of her. A family situation that got out of hand. Alicia argued for the maximum. 10 years. A clear case of calculated fraud. A vulnerable victim. The need to send a message that elder abuse would not be tolerated. Then Judge Hartman looked at Keisha and spoke. Miss Gibson, I've been doing this job for a long time. I've seen a lot of people come through this courtroom. Gang members, drug dealers, violent offenders. And I can usually understand, on some level, what drove them to do what they did. Poverty, addiction, desperation, mental illness. But what you did, I cannot understand. You targeted the one person in the world who loved you unconditionally, who had sacrificed for you, who trusted you completely. And you exploited that trust for money, not to feed your children or pay for medicine or keep a roof over your head. You did it for luxury. For a fancy apartment and a nice car and designer clothes. That kind of callousness, that kind of greed, it's sociopathic, and it deserves the full weight of this court's judgment. He sentenced her to 8 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 5. Keisha was led away in handcuffs, and this time she did look at me. Her eyes were empty, like someone had turned off a light inside her. I walked out of that courthouse into March sunshine, and Marcus walked beside me. You did it. He said, you won, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. I got $72,000 back. The rest was gone, spent on a lifestyle Keisha had maintained for months. Marcus tried to go after Travis, her boyfriend, but he disappeared the moment Keisha was arrested, probably off finding his next mark. I sold the house on South Harper Avenue. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I bought a small condo in Bronzeville with a view of the park, and I started over. I'm 70 years old now. It's been almost 2 years since Keisha went to prison. I've rebuilt my savings. I've made new friends. I volunteer at a community center. helping other seniors navigate banking and legal issues, teaching them to recognize the warning signs of elder abuse. Jerome Jr. and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. He apologized finally. Really apologized. Not the half-hearted, "I'm sorry you feel that way" nonsense. He's in therapy now, working through his own guilt and grief. We have lunch once a month. It's not what it was, but it's something. Keisha has written me 3 letters from prison. I haven't opened any of them. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear whatever she has to say, but not yet. Some wounds need time to scar over before you can examine them without bleeding. People ask me if I regret pressing charges, if I wish I'd handled it differently, and my answer is always the same. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that someone I loved betrayed me so completely. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret refusing to be a victim. Because here's what I learned through all of this, and I hope you'll hear me. You teach people how to treat you. And when you let someone steal from you, lie to you, abuse you without consequences, you're teaching them that you don't matter, that you're not worth protecting, that they can get away with it. I matter. My life matters. My dignity matters. And I'll be damned if I spend my final years letting anyone tell me otherwise. So if you're watching this and you've been hurt by someone you trusted, I want you to know, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to press charges. It's okay to cut toxic people out of your life, even if they're family, especially if they're family. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to abuse you. I'm Loretta Mae Gibson. I'm 70 years old. I survived betrayal by the person I trusted most. And I'm still here, still standing, still fighting. And if an old woman from Chicago can do it, so can you. Before I go, I want to ask you for something. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it gave you courage, share it. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Subscribe to this channel so we can keep telling stories that matter. Stories about real people facing real challenges and finding real strength. Because the only way we stop people like Keisha is by speaking up, by refusing to be silent, by showing other victims that they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for bearing witness to my pain and my survival. Now go tell yours.